Welcome back, everybody, to Let the Journey Begin. My name is Hilary Roberts, and here is my co-host, Jason Waller.
Hi, Hilary.
Hey, bud. What's up?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm a little dingy right now because I'm just having fluids today, and you already know why.
Yeah, another one of them fun procedures, huh?
Oh, yeah. Everybody out there, don't be jealous. But tomorrow, I get to do a colonoscopy. Yay!
Oh, Lord. Well, hey, look, you're taking care of yourself. That's what matters. And
I am. This is important.
There's a lot of times before that, we wouldn't put our health first. And
well, I was thinking about, Jay, how I was married to the porcelain throne for awful reasons. And at least now this is going to be later today for health reasons, to screen for cancer, to do all those things that are necessary. I think about that amazing actor that we just lost to colon cancer, Chadwick.
Yep. So, no, it's important, and I appreciate that. But hey, on a positive note, I also wanted to let everybody know, that we raised a little bit over $200,000 for our event, which was incredible, and very, very excited about that. So thank you for everybody that contributed and
thank you,
was a part
everyone.
of. Be able to help a lot of people, provide people, scholarships, and we're going to be able to do a lot more lectures and be able to have a lot more speaking engagements around the country and build out the website. And, so if you guys are struggling with substance abuse, mental health, or trauma, be sure to check out redsongbird.org because there is a plethora of information that will help you and or a loved one that is struggling get a better understanding and help provide some insight and direction. So very excited about that, Hilary.
Me too.
How was your travel back?
amazing.
You were just here. You went back home. How was the trip back? Was it good?
Amazing. I'm back in Texas. I really missed my little fur babies, and I normally bring them with me to LA, or at least the two dogs, not the cat. And we had just too much going on. There was no way I could do all that. And quite frankly, another thing that I had to do, because I had all these other things scheduled after our event, but I was, we prepped so hard, which, by the way, you guys are going to hear Jason and I and Damon Sharp and Eric Santacola co-wrote the foundation song, and we're going to be presenting that in a couple months or less. And we're just so excited about it. So that
it came out so well, by the way. It was phenomenal, and you crushed it. So
thank you.
Yeah, dude, we have a foundation theme song.
Oh, that's my gosh!
Rad. I don't know many organizations that have a foundation theme song. That's
I know. It's so exciting.
Well, look, you guys, we're going to kind of jump into this.
Let's do it.
I'm going to bring on. So we have a very special guest today. Her name is Laura. She actually was brought in through a friend of mine. But she works at the Homeless Healthcare of Los Angeles. It's a nonprofit that's been around for about 50 years. She does incredible work. I know some of her history was working with children, but now she works with a lot of adults. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being
Laura.
here.
Hi.
How's everything going? How was the drive down?
Drive was interesting. A lot of rain.
Right?
Oh, wow.
Was there traffic?
Tons of traffic as always on the 5.
See, before, that was the one positive thing from COVID was the drive to LA. During COVID, it was literally from here, from Orange County to LA. It was like 45 minutes because nobody was on the road.
Record breaking.
Yes, record breaking. And now it's back to an hour and 45 minutes.
It sure is.
God. Well, thank you so much for driving down here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
We're excited to have you here. So I'm gonna jump into a question we ask all of our guests this, okay?
Okay.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
A mermaid.
Oh, yeah, for real?
Oh, yeah.
My daughter would love you. That's amazing. So a mermaid.
I love that.
Mermaid. Okay, so how did that talk to me about that? How'd that come to fruition?
Sure. Grew up on The Little Mermaid. When I turned 5, I thought I was ready to move out, go to the ocean. Thanks, Mom, for the hospitality. It's been real.
Right.
And I was just going to go hang out with the fish.
I love it.
Okay, I've got something for you, Laura.
I would try that on my own, but you'd lose listeners.
Isn't that the little thing that she would do?
It is, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
You look like the Little Mermaid a little bit, Hilary.
You do.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So after wanting to be a mermaid and having that transpire, was there something else that as you got older that you were wanting to be, that you grew into?
Yeah, I wanted to be an actress after that.
Yeah.
So did a lot of acting classes, always did the talent show every year at school.
Right.
I don't know how I'd do that today. Oh my gosh. And then it just evolved into wanting to help people. I'm an only child, and that
Okay.
was kind of my way of connecting with people and making friendships
Wow.
since I didn't have siblings.
No way. So
Aw.
from wanting to be an actress though, what was there a pivotal point that changed for you, or like where you wanted to actually transition into helping people?
There is. I begged my mom for years, let me do modeling, let me move to California and do this. And she told me it was illegal. And then I finally got into modeling classes, and they told me at the age of 12 that I was too ugly.
No. And
So I
got
I'm
out
looking
of
at
it.
her, and she's so beautiful, and
Oh,
she's got
thank
that
you.
beaming smile.
So
Don't worry, girl. They've told me I
No
can't
way.
sing, and then, yeah, whatever.
Right,
Bye.
right. You take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But
But
so,
that's
yeah.
that's devastating to hear at such a young age. I mean,
course
wanting
it
to
is.
have your dreams and, be fulfilled, and then you go in there and having something like that can be shattering.
Yeah,
Awful.
I abandoned that dream altogether after that.
God, and
That's
how did
horrible.
that is super, super terrible. I mean, and how did that affect you moving forward?
Really affected my self-image. So that was something that I had to work on for a while. And then really understanding what it was to support other people in their dreams
Right.
and making sure that they don't feel that way or they don't have a similar experience.
Dude, it's just and that was at 12 years
12.
old.
Those kind of people, how can they not have a heart? It's
Well,
just crazy.
There's a reason they're behind that desk.
Ooh, that's so true.
Oh, come on,
Very,
girl.
very true.
Slay them down. Slay
Yeah.
them
Just saying.
down.
So from there, did you end up not, so is this what ended up driving you over the course of time to get into the work that you're doing today?
It had me change direction, absolutely. And I started to just realize how important relationships were.
Right.
And then in going to college, I went to college and got an undergrad in psychology.
Ah.
Wanted to finally apply that. And that was my first taste in social work, was working with pre-adjudicated youth.
Wow.
I know what that is, but do you mind sharing with our listeners what that is?
Sure. It's the youth that are, before they go to court, before they have any formal charges or before that legal ball gets rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that dominoed into, so you worked with the adolescent side of stuff, and then when did it transition into working with adults?
It transitioned when I finally wanted a new challenge. I wanted to make sure that I was the best, well-rounded case manager that I could be.
Right.
And part of that is having experience with different ages and different demographics.
I love it. So it's crazy that I hear how, from the little age from wanting to be a mermaid to, then wanting to be an actress, and then almost this life-changing event that happened to you with a dream that you wanted to pursue ultimately helped start leading the way for what you're doing today.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Hilary, why don't you hit her with some questions around the trauma and just looking at how that impacted, and because I think there's a lot of, if you're okay with it.
Oh, of
and
course.
There's so many people out there that I think that are listening that we're in a stage in life now where, so many people have experienced trauma, these types of things. And because for me, I never thought I ever experienced trauma until I met Hilary. And there were things when I was younger, because I never had anything crazy happen to me when I was a kid, but there was a lot of self-inflicted traumas that I did to myself. And when I learned a lot about that, it helped me. There was a lot of release and a lot of freedom from that. But I think with what you're saying and with what Hilary's background and what she's gone through, I think there could be a really cool dynamic here about talking to this, because I would love to hear more about your work and stuff. But I think before we get there, it'd be awesome to talk about kind of that traumatic piece that maybe have happened there.
It's very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know a lot about your history, and I don't know if you had traumatic things happen to you growing up. Like, what is the one thing that really has been the hardest for you to overcome, if you're willing to share it?
Oh, goodness. Yes. And it's something that I'm actually still working through.
Okay.
When I was 21, my dad died from alcoholism.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I understand that is a path that is pretty defined. Other people see it coming, right? The stages of alcoholism. As a kid, I was still very self-absorbed. So to me, it felt like a sudden loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
How old was he?
He was 58.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be
Wow.
12 years on the 28th that he's passed.
Wow.
Holy
So what was that? Can you describe more for our listeners what that was like for
Oh,
you?
sure.
You find out the news and you're going along like just, yeah.
Yeah. So I was at work. I was working at a bank at the time. My aunt had called me in the morning saying, it's not looking good. So I was mentally preparing myself. Went to work, and as his condition was worsening, I had asked to leave because he was living in Florida and I wanted to go home and just like prep because ticking time bomb. But they wouldn't let me leave. So then I basically said goodbye to my dad in the break room.
Oh my gosh, the bank wouldn't let you leave when they said
Yeah.
you said your dad was dying?
Right.
That's another trauma. That's ridiculous.
It is another trauma, but I've gone back to revisit it. And my hope is that everyone that was involved in that situation, we all did our best that day.
Mm.
Right. Not everyone knows how to respond to that. So I just hope that we all did our best. And that's what the outcome was.
Mm-hmm.
So going into that, like, with your dad, and I mean, you did say about how certain people kind of understand and see those things coming to fruition of somebody that struggles with that. Was your dad was he a functioning alcoholic?
Very high functioning.
And to the point where you almost didn't know that he struggled with it that much?
True. He would drink in his room a lot. There was a few times that I did see him very inebriated, but it wasn't like an everyday thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Wow.
Got it.
And so with the condition, was it his liver? Was it?
Yeah. So his liver started to lose function and he started to build up fluid in his gut. And then he'd have to get it tapped because it couldn't keep up. And then, of course, what ultimately got him was he went septic.
Yeah.
So
now, was this a one-time visit, or had he had problems and then he'd ignore it?
several months. Yeah.
So
Several
then he would
months
drink
go
even
in
though
and-
he knew his condition.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Many of us die that way.
I think people need to understand that, again, as I know we were just saying we're going to talk about trauma, but then addiction comes up. And again, they all go hand in hand with one another. But I mean, that's just a prime example of showing how cunning, baffling, and powerful the disease of addiction is. Knowing that we're on our deathbed and, hey, you continue to drink, this is where it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think I can grasp that. It's so easy for me to understand because I've been there and I've been in that state where there's so many people out there too that can't understand that or comprehend it. I almost call it like a survival gene, is when you're in that depths of addiction, you'll do anything that you possibly can to have your hands on that substance.
Absolutely. And it's easy for the family to feel that maybe they're chosen over that substance. I just know that he, again, was doing the best he could do as well.
And see, I
that.
love that you're saying that. There was a man that wrote a book called A New Pair of Glasses, Chuck C. And he talks about that everybody's doing the best that they can. And, and I want to know for our listeners, what got you to this point? Because I'm sure you were blindsided and you were hurt and you were upset. But so how did you get from there to this perspective you have today?
A lot of hard work and a lot of therapy. I seek out a lot of different avenues to see what information helps me and what doesn't. Surprisingly enough, there's an app where I guess high-profile people go on and talk about their job. And some of the best advice was, when you experience trauma, if you don't process it well, you're no longer present. You're no longer present for those emotions. And you need to go back to your inner child and take that walk down that emotional path, experience all those emotions, and hold that little kid's hand and let them know that it's okay. You're never going to leave. You did the best you can. And so then I kind of expanded that perspective to other aspects of my life.
That's so great. What are some of the tools? Like, if people are struggling with what you're struggling with, what are some of the things that you can suggest that they can seek out? Some of these tools that you're talking about, or the types of therapy that you did?
Sure. One of the things that really changed my life, and I can't even emphasize how much it changed my life, was a book on attachment styles, adult attachment styles. There's 3 different. You have anxious, you have healthy, and then you have avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
Showed me why I act the way I act.
Wow.
And where that's coming from and why I'm getting the outcomes that I'm getting.
Wow. That's
and
really
it
great.
really changed my relationships. Yeah.
I'm thinking about how that's, I mean, there's so much there, that's transpired, because I mean, it is very powerful to hear you say and get to a place where you were saying your dad was doing the best he could.
Mm-hmm.
And what were some of the things, like, how did you, because there's a lot of people could hold on to those things as resentments or frustrations. I mean, I know like my wife and family members, when I was in the depths of addiction, right? They always would, they would think that I was choosing the substance or the drug or alcohol over them. Did you think that your dad was choosing substances over you at one point?
I think as a teenager, yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you did go through that process. And then after that, what were the stages that you took to get to a place to have that freedom though?
Sure. I mean, I remember the moment he died, I was like, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. But then both seeing trauma and substance abuse through my work that I do, as well as learning his history.
Right.
I have nothing but compassion for that.
Mm.
He had a really hard upbringing. And then I've also seen people in the middle of their addiction and understanding that sometimes it's not free will. It's just, how they know how to cope, right? That person is still there. There's that element of addiction. So it's being able to have compassion for that person, kind of wipe away the addiction and understand that there's someone under there.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
That's really beautiful. So in your work, this wonderful work that you do, do you, can you tell us a little bit about that and how that's helped you? You kind of touched on it, but how that's helped your empathy and your understanding and some of the meetings you've had, et cetera.
Of course. So I always go back to the saying that everyone is battling something. Everyone's in some sort of battle. We don't know what it is. So my work has allowed me to build extensive and therapeutic relationships with these folks. And I've learned about their story, and I've seen how they've come to substances as a coping skill, a maladaptive coping skill. And that really helped me understand what was going on with my dad, or being able to understand the person even more, like as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So for my job, I can go in and I can provide counseling. I can help the homeless population access treatment, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, or medically assisted. I help with housing, getting benefits, medical, all that stuff. So I'm a jack of all trades.
Wow, that's amazing. So
I love it.
Do you get to be like present and speak to people individually then?
I do. And I have to tell you that some of the people that I've been lucky enough to meet have absolutely changed my life. I will remember them forever.
Oh, I just love that. And can you give us any details at all about, in a general way, we would never know who they were, but like maybe a story that it was like, wow, this is powerful for me.
Of course.
Right.
I had an individual that was an alcoholic. He had been sober, I believe, for 5 years before. Extensive family trauma. He was very hard to get to a good point to start work on housing and sobriety. Because they're always, do you work on the mental health or do you work on the substance use? Which one do you do first? And we did it at the same time. Mm-hmm. Stuck by him through the darkest times. He was a very tough case, to the point where I would call cops to do welfare checks because I was scared of what I might find in his motel room. Mm-hmm. Got him to the point where we got him housing. He's still in that housing like 3 years later, and he is sober, and he is the most inspirational, fantastic human being ever.
And that's a big part of why, that's why we do the work that we do. There's nothing more gratifying, than giving back and not looking for anything in return. When you see these people turn their lives around, mm-hmm. It's the most rewarding thing in the world. Yeah. And I think there's so many, I'm sure you could experience that on a daily basis in the work that you do. But what I would love to hear now is like, we touched on, there's so many just little things that had happened in your life and that we were trying to encapsulate in such a short amount of time. But, there's been the devastating thing that happened at 12 years old, the things that you experienced with, wanting to pursue dreams that's got shattered. And then, as you grew up, you lost somebody that you were obviously it's your father, somebody that you were very close to, that you loved and cared about so much. And it seems like you've come a long ways just hearing you talk in the 5 to 7 minutes around that specific component. You could see the growth that you've already made in those areas. And I know it's been 10 years. It's taken time to get to where you're at. But, let's talk about the solution. I mean, how do you, what are the things that you do now? Because I heard you still say that you're still working on yourself. You're still working on, on processing this stuff, because it's, again, it's something that you'll probably have to work on for the rest of your life. Because my wife lost her dad
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
From a heart attack at a very young age. And that's something that's changed her for forever. And so I think, I would love to hear a solution around that. Like, what are you doing today for yourself? What are you doing to get through those processes? What are you doing, today? Do you still have traumas come up from that 12-year-old little girl that experienced that piece? I mean, can we talk about some of that?
Oh, of course. So I am a big information seeker. And one thing that my mom always taught me that is invaluable is to take an honest look at yourself.
Right.
I've had a lot of difficulty with relationships, in all honesty. And it was just time for me to sit down and really figure out, where is that originating from?
Right.
And it does originate from losing my dad, as well as that dynamic of having an addict in the family. So I wanted to seek out, like, why are these behaviors this way? What am I doing? And how do I intervene with those? Again, one of that was the attachment book. One of them was being honest with myself. Instead of saying, my life fell apart when my dad died, instead this is a life event, and how do we learn from it and integrate it into who we want to become?
Right. And did you find yourself, like, in the relational stuff? Because I think this is a big thing too, is we start to surround ourselves with unhealthy relationships and these types of things, correct? Did you see yourself going in relationships where you were trying to fix the situations or fix the person potentially?
I wasn't looking for those people, but what I've learned from your previous podcast about codependency is that codependent people attract narcissists.
Oh,
Yep.
come on, girl. Preach
Good.
it.
Okay.
Preach
Yeah.
it.
So so you didn't intentionally do it though, but
Correct.
again, you're a product of your environment, right? So you're not necessarily that you were looking for that, but again, is in the environment that you grew up, you were naturally attracting that in a sense,
Yes,
correct? Is
yeah.
that fair to say?
And I thought I was crazy. I'm like, where am I finding all these narcissists? And why am I finding people that need help or that I kind of naturally fit into that role?
Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, because I think a lot of people, that's a whole thing. I mean, with trauma, and Hilary, maybe you could talk a little bit about this too, though, is a lot of traumatic incidences and people that have struggled and suffered with trauma that is untreated. Let me say that again, that is untreated, tend to pull those types of people near them.
Yeah, and you witnessed some of that with me, Jay. I mean, you didn't meet the last male narcissist that I dated, but that,
Thank God.
yeah, it was, I had a pattern of running from good people because not everyone, but certain areas, because in certain areas I still had core beliefs about myself from the way I grew up, and I had a perception about myself about the way I was treated, and also the stories I made up about me that were just negative lies. And so that whole pattern of saying I am worth so much more than this, and Jason walked out stuff with me with some people in business, friendships, where I had to, and I was like seeing it. And and this last fall, I had a little blip with somebody who was really, really, really good. And I was just really shocked. I'm like, I thought I was completely past this, but I had a little slip in an area, because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll want you to keep secrets. They'll want to and they do things in a slick kind of way. So if I can't be transparent with the people that I'm really close to about, I just have to really be on point and be like you talk about that reparenting of Hilary, the little Hilarys, but also being my own best friend. And when that little alert goes off inside me to say, because it was banging. And I was just like, no, my brain was like, no, they're this, they're that. And yeah. And Jason and I walked through that too. It It's just wild. And a lot of these people are very, for people like you and I, being empathetic, these people have no conscience. So then it's also being able to create boundaries and saying no.
And so I think the thing that you experience, though, is you're able to identify that, right? I mean, you had to become aware of it first, right?
Become aware of it. I'm no longer into painting red flags green.
Come on, girl, or painting
right?
or making a red carpet.
Yes, a red carpet. So then and I think you do that by establishing those boundaries and finding that intangible like self-worth. It's deep inside that takes a lot of work to bring out. But yeah.
It really, really does. And I think so being able to work through those things, I mean, were you able to identify through that trauma, like, would you say that there was codependency things that did surface?
Absolutely. And it was very surprising to see where that stuff surfaced because it's in the least expected areas.
Can you share a little bit more about
that? Come on, girl.
Okay, here we go. Sorry, Mom. I think I got a lot of it from my mom. I think, again, she was doing the best she could, but she was also living with an addict, and I can't even imagine how hard that is, especially with a child.
100%.
So
no, and I look, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I mean, my parents, I love them more than anything, but I share about it all the time. My parents almost love me to death, literally. You know what I mean? And it's until I learned those tools and learned and it got them the help that they needed. I mean, they literally had to go to a program for codependency it was a 1-week program. They ended up going for 2.
Well, Jay, there's one other thing, which is they say the alcoholic or addict, they take the drink and the codependent takes the alcoholic or the addict. It's like, that's their thing. So.
No, totally is. So, looking at all that stuff that you've gone through and processed, we ask each of our listeners too, and I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable. And I mean, cause it's amazing to hear, all the different variations of what you've gone through. And again, I know we were jumping from one thing to another, but I think gave us a good, it was a very good painting because at the end of the day, I can relate to you so much. Hilary can relate to you so much. It's the same painting, different colors. We all kind of ended in that same spot and look at where we're at today. But we ask, if you were to give our listeners that are going through something, an action for the day, what would it be for them?
An action for the day. My action for the day, I would say, is to learn to set a boundary. That would be my action for the day. I think that was one of the hardest things to learn as an adult. There's no book on it. Sometimes a boundary doesn't feel like a boundary.
Right.
And they actually end up turning into a pretty healthy path for you to walk down.
I think setting a boundary is one of the most important things anybody can do. I think that's a great action.
Yeah.
And Jason's learned to do that because he'd get a lot of people pulling on him, and now he's really good about scheduling his work time, his family time, and I think that's
you had to get rid
fabulous.
of. Forbes came out the best article ever. It's called Assholes, ASKHOLES. How can I take 45 minutes of your time to benefit my life? We had to get rid of all those people. So
yes, we did.
And I think, again, as your stories, I appreciate you coming in and being so open around this stuff. But where can people find you?
Of course. Homeless Healthcare of Los Angeles. And there are many other nonprofit organizations in LA as well that are working towards the same objective.
Cool.
So fabulous.
Yeah. And if I can just say one thing, it's just always have compassion for yourself, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Give
yourself
girl.
Grace.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, Laura, wonderful, wonderful.
So nice to meet you.
How beautiful is it? Another person, Laura, that took her own tragedies, traumas, and utilized those dark places, those dark pains to help others be averted from misery and death, and really helping our indigent society that are struggling with homelessness. And I really related to her on so many levels. And, I just feel like as a society today, we are healing in such a beautiful way. And it is my hope that this podcast helped you a lot today, because it certainly helped me. And I'm wishing everybody much love, much hugs. And if you're willing to walk out the pain, you can get to the freedom, but walk out the pain in solution, not in the same story and the same patterns over and over. If you can start stepping out of that familiarity into new experiences to get to that other side, you'll find an amazing life beyond your wildest dreams, I promise, because it happened for me. Have a great week, everybody.